Of the political network for values. Let me mention that we have interpretation. You can find in the menu below the interpretation button. Hay traducción simultánea para todos aquellos que lo necesiten.
There is simultaneous translation in case
Lo
you
tienen
need
en el
it.
menú.
And you have it on your menu.
Entonces voy a hablar en español.
Then I'm going to speak in Spanish.
Estamos todavía esperando un poco que se
We're
vayan
waiting
sumando
for a little bit
algunos participantes
to
más.
see other participants can join us.
Pero bueno, que entonces simplemente dar la
just simply
bienvenida
welcome
a estos
all of you
diálogos
to
transatlánticos que organizamos
Transatlantic dialogues that
desde
we
la Political Network
organize
for Values, la Red
from the
Política por los Valores, que
Political Network
como
for Values.
ya muy bien saben, es una red que
That
reúne
you know
representantes
well that this is a
políticos
network
de
that gathers
América,
political
África
representatives from
y Europa,
America, Africa, and Europe,
fundamentalmente, que comparten
mainly.
un
That
decálogo de
share
valores compartidos,
a decalogue
que
of
están
shared values
publicados en nuestra
that are
web
published in our
y que son los
website.
principios de alguna manera no negociables de
Is
defensa
the
de la dignidad humana,
beginning
que parten del
of
concepto y
all
de la
those principles
defensa
are
profunda de la dignidad humana.
non-negotiables that start with the
En estos diálogos
defense of
transatlánticos lo
human
que
life.
queremos es
In this Transatlantic
exponer
dialogues, we would like to
y tratar, abordar algunos de
expose
los
and to
temas que nos
talk about
parecen pues, más
certain
relevantes
topics
en el
that we think that
momento
are
desde
more
el punto de
relevant
vista político
at the moment from the
en
political
relación con estos
standpoint.
valores y
In
compartir también
relationship with these
experiencias
values, we want to share
positivas
positive
que se dan,
experiences,
sobre todo experiencias políticas y que
political
pueden ser útiles
experiences
para
that can
el
be
resto de
useful for
otros
the rest of
legisladores, otros
other
representantes
legislators or other
políticos
representatives
a ambos
in the
lados
politics in both
del
sides of
Atlántico.
the Atlantic Ocean.
La dinámica de los
The dynamic
diálogos,
of the dialogues,
también tenemos, bueno, aparte de los representantes políticos,
we
también
also
líderes de la
have
sociedad
political
civil
representatives
que
and leaders of
tienen, pues
the
bueno,
civil society
una mentalidad política de alguna
that
manera
have
y que apoyan
political
pero también
mindsets
medidas políticas y
and support
legislativas
all this
que
legislative
favorezcan una
initiatives
agenda
that
en
favors
pro de
an
la dignidad
agenda
humana, ¿no?
in pro of human dignity.
Entonces, la dinámica de los webinars
So the dynamics of the
hay unas
webinars
presentaciones iniciales. Hoy
there's some
tenemos unos
presentations at the
magníficos
beginning.
invitados que
We have
enseguida
great
vamos a
guests
presentar,
and speakers that we
que
gonna present.
tendrán pues unos 10 minutos
They
de
will have 10 minutes of
presentación cada
presentation each
uno.
one.
Y después
And then
se
after that,
abrirá
we're
un
going to
coloquio
open
con
a
miembros de
colloquium
nuestra red
with the
que
members
participan con
of
voz
our
y
network
vídeo, ¿no?
that can
Además,
participate
damos
with
también la
video and
bienvenida
voice.
pues, a muchos
We also
otros
welcome to
asistentes,
all
participantes
attendants,
que
people,
se irán sumando y
participants of the
que
general
nos
public
acompañan
that will be with
siempre
us
también
and have
en
been
estos
with
coloquios y
us
siempre hay
always in this
nuevos participantes.
colloquiums, and there's always
Se han
new
registrado para
participants.
participar en este
We
webinar
have registered
personas de
a number
18 países
of
diferentes,
people
como
from
decía antes,
18 different
de África, de
countries,
América
as I mentioned,
y
from
de
Africa
Europa.
and America
Así es
and
que
Europe, as I mentioned
vamos a
before.
presentar a
So
nuestros
let's
ponentes. Estamos un
present
poco
our speakers.
esperando, me parece,
We're waiting a little
a la
bit.
diputada
I think
Lucaselli de
we're waiting
Italia,
for
pero bueno, voy
Deputy
a dar,
Lucaselli,
enseguida se unirá. Voy a dar la
but
palabra
she will be
a
joining
Ivonne
here soon, I'm
Mieles.
sure.
Algunos ya la conocen
So
porque
Yvonne
moderó
Mieles will
nuestro
speak to
último
you
webinar.
now. She was the
Ivonne
moderator
es
of our last
nuestra
webinar, so you know her.
Events and Training
So she
Officer.
is our Events and Training Officer.
Es de Ecuador y nos está
She's from Ecuador,
ayudando a
and
organizar
she's helping us
estos
to
diálogos
organize
y ella va
these
a presentar a
dialogues.
nuestros
So
invitados
she'll be
y a
presenting
moderar
our
después
guests
el
and
coloquio.
to moderate the colloquium afterwards.
Adelante, Ivonne.
Go ahead, Yvonne.
So, well, like the name of this webinar is The Path Towards Abolishing Surrogacy, and we kind of choose this topic because on April 23rd, the European Parliament voted to include the exploitation of surrogacy as a form of human trafficking at the European level. So for discussing about this topic that is very important, currently we have three amazing speakers. And the first one is going to be Bernard Garcia Larraín. that he is the coordinator of the Casablanca Declaration for Universal Abolition of Surrogacy, and we have the pleasure to hear him today. So thank you, Bernard, for accepting our invitation. You have the floor.
Thank you, Yvonne. So I think I will speak in Spanish because it's my first language, and if I understand well, you have many Spanish speakers, if it's okay. Translation is working, I hope, no? Okay, thank you. Bueno, entonces, nada, muchas gracias por la invitación.
Then thank you very much for the invitation.
Como bien lo dijo Yvonne,
As Yvonne said, I am the coordinator of the Casablanca Declaration to the abolition of surrogacy. And I work in an ONG in France as a lawyer protecting infants. The idea of the declaration in Casablanca started with because a lot of groups like us that were working for some time now in the topic of surrogacy, they will see that there is an international consensus of the need of its abolition, a formal abolition through an international treaty. Why? Because in many countries, they prohibit or they do not recognize surrogacy, and that became a global market that was very lucrative. In 2022, is valued as $14,000 million, and in 2022, is valued in more 100,000 millions of dollars. So we think that these agents are clinics, fertility clinics, lawyers, and agencies that look for these women that are going to lend their uterus. This market is prosperous because there's no political will internationally that is committing in an international treaty. So we, with the Casablanca Declaration, the invitation was to all these groups, all these experts, medics, lawyers, philosophers, university professors, and people like who are in the field in associations in Ukraine and Africa that work for women and for kids. We want them to join them through the signage of this declaration, so people from different perspectives can join together around the idea of the abolition of surrogacy. So these experts signed all this in 2023 in Marruecos. I would say there's three characteristics, as I mentioned before. It's interdisciplinary because surrogacy, maternity through surrogacy, can be studied through different points of view, not just through the point of view of the lawyers, which is important, with how rights are violated of human beings. And after that, internationally, I was saying that it's another characteristic is because it's an international market. This is not reduced to just developed countries or certain countries that have promoted the surrogacy, but this is a global market. Like in France, where surrogacy is not recognized legally, so the citizens go to other countries where they can do it legally, or where there's no control or legislation. So the clinics, they go and find clients in these countries where surrogacy is not legal. So it can be described that citizens from rich countries that go to less rich countries to contact women to bury their kids. And then also there's another problem of bringing these kids into the original country of the parents. So Yvonne was saying earlier what happened in European parliaments. It's an international general consensus also in a political sense. This is not a thing of right or left-wing agendas. This is human dignity. So that's why we can speak about it here. This is something that makes us think about other people, about the abuse of the vulnerability of women, and that threatens their health and their equilibrium. So
objetivo de la
for all
Declaración de
these reasons,
Casablanca
the
y el grupo de
objective of the
Casablanca es
Casablanca
muy
Declaration
simple,
and
pero
our
al
group
mismo tiempo muy
is very
ambicioso,
simple,
que
but at
es
the same time is very
que la comunidad
ambitious.
internacional se
Is
ponga
that the
de acuerdo,
international
para
community
firmar y para
agrees on
establecer una
signing
convención internacional de abolición
an international
de la maternidad
convention to
subrogada para
abolish
proteger a las
motherhood
mujeres.
through surrogacy,
Este
to
mercado,
protect
que es
women
efectivamente un mercado
in this
extremadamente
market
agresivo,
that
o sea,
is
que no
a
conoce
very
fronteras,
aggressive
que no
market that
conoce
knows
de
no
saber si
boundaries,
está prohibido o no en un país.
and
Lo
it
vemos en
doesn't
países
care
como
about if
España,
it's forbidden
Francia,
or not in
Italia, donde tienen
countries like in
agencias, donde tienen
France,
clínicas y
Spain,
organizan
where there are
eventos para
clinics that
promover la
organize
maternidad
events to
subrogada, para
promote
atraer clientes, tienen
surrogacy
agentes
and to
especiales
attract
que
clients.
hablan
They have
francés, que
special
hablan inglés, que
agents.
hablan
They
los idiomas de
speak
los potenciales clientes.
English,
Ayer mismo me llegó una
French, or
noticia
any
en
language that
Argentina,
they
en Buenos
need to
Aires,
get their clients.
de carteles, ¿no? De publicidades
There are
diciendo,
posters
¿quieres
in Argentina,
arrendar
I
tu
saw
vientre
those, that
de
says
manera
like, do you
segura,
want to
cumple tu
expand your
sueño,
uterus in a
etcétera,
safe
etcétera? O
way,
sea, cómo esta agencia, este
fulfill your
mercado
dreams,
va a
etc.,
buscar
etc.
a las
So how
mujeres jóvenes
this
que tienen
market is
toda la vida
going to
delante de
these
ellas,
women that
amenazando su
have their
salud, su
lives ahead of
equilibrio,
us
el
to
equilibrio de su
threaten
propia
their
familia,
equilibrium, their health,
proponiéndole
their
obviamente en muchos de estos
family
países
security.
una recompensa
So they're
financiera mucho más
promoting
elevada de
this,
lo que ellos podrían
and
optar
they offer them
buscando, yendo
money
al mercado
to attract
laboral
them,
o buscando
that it's
educación,
better
etcétera.
than maybe finding a job or another means.
Entonces, como lo decía, desde el punto de vista legal y
So as I
desde un punto
mentioned,
de vista más
from the
filosófico,
legal
está,
point of
es
view
bastante
and
evidente,
even
¿no? Esto también
philosophical point of view, this is
un argumento que es
evidence.
muy interesante en la maternidad
This is a
subrogada,
very
que quizá a
interesting
diferencia de otros
argument.
temas, la maternidad subrogada, cuando uno lo piensa, o sea, separar a un
Surrogacy,
niño
if you think
de la
about
madre
it,
que
to
lo gestó
separate
al
the
nacimiento
kid
para
from
darle
the
una pareja
mother
o otra persona de
that
otro país,
who birthed
sabiendo que
him
todos
in
los
her
estudios
uterus,
médicos dicen
this
la importancia,
separation,
¿no? que el niño tiene
all
con
medical studies tells us that
su madre,
how this
la importancia de
connection,
la relación
physical
piel a
connection is
piel,
important,
etcétera, etcétera. De la misma
and the
manera,
touch
todos
of
los
the
estudios que
skin
se han hecho
and
del
the body
riesgo que
connection.
una maternidad
So the risk
dicha
of
subrogada
separating them two,
conlleva para la salud
studies
de las
say that
mujeres, con el alto,
is risky
con el
for
riesgo que esto supone, o sea, ya la maternidad, o
the
sea, la
health of the
gestación es un
baby
riesgo,
and the
pero como
mother.
una maternidad que es provocada, ¿no? Con
Pregnancy in
hormonas, todo
itself
lo
is
que,
a risk,
a todo
but
el proceso a
a
la que la mujer
pregnancy that
se
is
somete, ¿no? Desde el
provoked
punto de
with
vista legal, el
hormones
niño
and all these
tiene,
medical
desde un punto de vista
treatments
internacional, derecho a conocer sus
makes it
orígenes, a ser educado por sus
even more
padres en la
so.
medida de lo posible. Todos esos derechos son, de alguna
All
manera u
this,
otra, violadas por esta
all
práctica,
these
por este mercado.
rights are
De la misma
violated by this
manera,
market and these
nosotros tenemos
practices.
una portavoz en la Declaración de
We
Casablanca,
have a
Olivia Morel, que es
speaker,
una francesa
Olivia Morel.
franco-americana
She's
de 32
an
años.
American
Ella nació por
French
maternidad subrogada
32-year-old
hace
woman.
32 años en Estados Unidos.
She used
Y
maternity,
ella tiene
surrogated
este
maternity
testimonio muy
some years
fuerte, ¿no?
ago.
De
So she
cómo
has this
ella se ha
testimony
sentido
and how
vulnerable
she has felt
por el hecho de haber
very
nacido por
vulnerable
maternidad subrogada. Tiene el
for being
síndrome del
born
abandono.
through
Ella misma lo ha dicho en la
surrogacy.
prensa,
She
su vida
feels
tiene un cierto precio, ¿no? O
abandoned
sea,
and
fue
she
el
has
objeto de una transacción comercial, de un
feeling
contrato,
that her
y
life
que
has a
obviamente
price
en una sociedad que quiere respetar los
is
derechos humanos
devastating.
no es algo que se pueda hacer de la misma manera que
So
tampoco
she
se puede
doesn't
reducir a
see
una
surrogacy
mujer
as a human
solamente a
right,
su condición reproductiva,
and
a
a woman
condiciones
cannot
muy, muy
be
estrictas
reduced
en
to
derecho
her
laboral, ¿no? Como
reproductive
reglamentar
capabilities.
su vida privada durante más de un año porque está sometida a este
So
proceso, la
her
voluntad de los
testimony of being
comitentes, ¿no? De los
submitted to
padres o de las
this
parejas que
process
tienen muchísimo
and
poder sobre
how
ella, o sea, en
the
ningún país
couples consent
democrático un contrato de
and
estos
promote
sobreviviría al examen
these
del derecho
practices
laboral, ¿no? Del derecho social. Todo eso nos tiene que hacer
is
pensar
out of
que hay una gran oportunidad
all
para promover esta
human right,
convención y
dignity, and
también en
protection.
derecho interno, ¿no? En cada país, yo los invito a
In
ustedes
each
que vienen de
country,
muchísimos países,
I
que
invite
participan
you that
en
you
política,
come from different
etcétera, o en la
countries
sociedad
and you
civil,
participate in
a
politics or
reflexionar y
in
y a pensar
society.
qué se
I would
puede
like
hacer
you
en
to
cada país.
reflect
¿Por
on what
qué
can be
les
done in
digo
each
esto? También
country.
porque
Why
pasa
am I
bastante que
saying
nos
this?
preguntan,
Because
no, en nuestro país esto
people
no
ask us, in
existe,
our
se da muy
country,
poco, etcétera.
doesn't
Pero es un
happen.
tema,
It's a
como
very
es un
little
mercado y los
practice.
mercados no
But since
conocen
this is a
límites y no se les
market
puede
and
venir
market has
límites,
no
tienden a expandirse.
boundaries,
Y como decía
they
hace un
tend to
rato, es
expand.
internacional.
So this is
Esto
international,
va a
as we mentioned
llegar tarde
before.
o temprano a
So now
muchísimos
and
países, si ya
then
no está instalado de
it
manera
will
oscura, a
eventually
través de
come
Internet,
to
a
your
través de las redes
country
sociales, cómo se
through
capta a estas mujeres, cómo se
internet or
ponen de
social
acuerdo
media,
con los
how they invite
comitentes.
these women,
También hay un aspecto que es
how do
muy
they
importante y que es
recruit
único en la maternidad subrogada, es
uteruses.
que ustedes, como seguramente lo saben, en el
So
caso
it'll
de la
reach your country
adopción,
eventually.
hay muchísimas condiciones, ¿no? Hay
So
un
in case
proceso
of
legal,
adoption, there is a
un
legal
encuadre
process.
legal muy fuerte
There
para
is a
justamente
very legal
proteger
frame to protect
el interés superior del niño.
the interest of the child. But in surrogacy, there is no criteria. The only criteria is money. If you have enough money to buy and rent a womb, then you can do it. So that opens the door for people with bad intentions. It opens the door to traffic of people, to the selling of babies, to so many bad practices. So our objective in Casablanca, as I mentioned before, is to promote an international convention and to talk to people like yourselves and to look for the support of global leaders like Italy, like Vatican, like the voice of Pope Francis. We have a reunion with him, and he has called the international community to follow the Casablanca Declaration to abolish surrogacy. We worked also in this direction that Yvonne was talking about, against traffic of people and the surrogacy, that it's really difficult not to think that a surrogacy case that is not traffic or selling of people. So to end, I have an invitation, as I said before. It's very important that you, as members of parliament, members of government, civic society, leaders, you need to be aware of this phenomena, of this market that is reaching your countries. So I would like you to reflect and would like you to invite you to introduce these ideas in your countries and to find a legal frame. And the best would be that all governments will be including this topic in their international agendas.
Thank you. So Bernard is like more or less the bridge between all of these countries. So now we are gonna discuss a bit what is happening in Europe with this topic, and for that we have the Italian deputy Ilenia Lucaselli. She's a lawyer. She's currently working in the Italian parliament. So welcome, Ilenia, and thank you for accepting our invitation too. You have the floor. We cannot hear you. I think you should turn on.
Do you hear me now?
Yeah, perfect.
Okay, thank you. So first of all, I want to thank you to let me be in this panel, because I think that one of the most important things that we should discuss in these days is the image that we have about the future society. And one of the main topic of this is how we want to build this future society, what we want to leave to our children for the future. And one of the most important things is starting to manage, to deal with a lot of new issues that we are facing now, so we can give answers and promote the right way to build our future society. One of these things is, as you understand better than me, make difficult or impossible to build. Do you still hear me?
Yes. Oh, I think she left. So wait a second. Okay.
I'm back. I'm sorry. So I was saying, one of the things that we have to do for the future is understanding that Europe has a huge role in this new society for the future. In Italy, Giorgia Meloni in the past year present, and now of course we are bringing that back and put that our priority in the parliament. The request to make illegal every birth that is actually coming from and what for us is an illegal use of the woman body. As you know better than me, when we talk about maternity, we are facing a lot of women that have economics disease. So this is one of the reasons why these women accept to have a child for someone else. We did a lot of laws in these 2 years with Premier Meloni that help families to grow, that help a woman to want more kids without saying that they cannot work. So everything we are doing right now is in this way. Of course, we firmly oppose those who want to question the family as a pillar of society, those who want to introduce gender theory in schools, those who want to favor inhumane practices such as surrogacy. You can't define progress by allowing enrichment to buy the bodies of poor women, or choosing children as we are in a supermarket, or as they are supermarket products. This is for us is not progress. This is obscurantism, and the proposal of do you still hear me?
Yes, yes, you're perfectly
Oh, okay,
fine.
okay. I'm sorry, because sometimes I just lose that. I don't know if you hear me or not. So the proposal of Fratelli d'Italia in the Italian parliament is in approval, is a law that wants to make the retended uterus as a universal crime. That is punishable in Italy even when it's committed abroad. And this is one of our main topic, because as you know, this type of tourism, as someone used to call it, create really a market. So they cannot do that in Italy, so they go abroad, they do it, and then they return back to Italy. So it's very important and must be our priority, having an European law that put this type of things as illegal, because we need to define what you can do inside Europe, not just inside one country, because you know, our country are really not that far. So it's really happening right now that they travel, they do it where other states allowed people to do it, and then they return back here in Italy, but even in other countries. So on these topics, they are very important for us. We need to define one line, one law, and put that in work in each country. And I think Italy, from this point of view, is really ahead of other country. Europe has actually rejected surrogacy, but we need to make that really like a law. So those who do these type of things must understand that that is illegal and not accepted around Italy. We need to be clear that the surrogacy is a crime, and we need to point that out in each country, and we need to point that out around even outside Europe, because we want to support families and support the future society, but we need to support that in a different way, which is not surrogacy. We need to help women that actually have some issues having kids to provide them the right assistance and the right welfare, so we can help those women to have kids. But it's completely different, as you understand. So the next vote that we are going to do in June for the European Parliament in this way, it's very, very important, because changing the composition of the European Parliament make us able to also make a huge changement in this type of topics, and we need to push the approval in European Parliament of the directive which extend the scope of the current measures to better combat and prevent trafficking in human beings, which Fratelli d'Italia support, and that was also supported from Fratelli d'Italia in the past. A step for a Europe that is truly closer to women, which counteracts all forms of violence and exploitation. I think the debate that we push in Italy is on your table too, because I really think Italy is the first country that push this topic out and make our Italian society to really debate about ethics and about our inside feelings about what we have for our child in the future. And one of the things that we are sure is that we don't want our kids think that the woman's body can be rented out like other market goods and should make any woman beyond political color horrified. So it's really important that the mother-child relationship is the mother-child relationship must be one of the topics that we need to focus on, because that type of relationship cannot be replaced in any way. And this is what the more other levels of our jurisprudence say. And I think that this is really a start to change what is happening in Europe right now. This is not only an Italian rearguard battle, but with the law that I hope will soon also be approved in the Senate, Italy will be able to provide states of our legislation against such such things, a law that give us the opportunity to understand the value of a woman body, the value of the relationship between a mom and a child, and the value for our society of a family that we need to support, but we also need to understand how to build. Sorry if I took too much time.
No, don't worry. Thank you, Ilenia. So thank you for the European Italian point of view. Now we are gonna listen to Emma Waters. She's a senior research associate for the Richard and Helen DeVos Center for Life, Religion and Family at the Heritage Foundation. So we are very happy to hear her, because she's gonna give us like a point of view from America, especially from the US. So thank you, Emma, also for accepting our invitation. Now you have the floor.
Wonderful. Thank you all so much for being here today. And thank you again for the opportunity to share with you. So as Yvonne said, I am Emma Waters and I work with the Heritage Foundation in Washington, D.C. It's one of the largest conservative think tanks that works typically on conservative policy. And I focus primarily on reproductive technologies and bioethics. So surrogacy is right in the wheelhouse. So in the United States, we do not have a single federal policy that governs surrogacy. We do have state policies that govern the practice, but they vary widely between each of the 50 states. So on average, we have, I would say, over half the states have a well built out surrogacy law that governs the practice, including commercial surrogacy, that requires contracts between the partners and provides some sort of legal protections for the intended parents and the surrogate in the contract. These are usually skewed totally towards the direction of protecting the intended parents, minimally protecting the surrogate, and very few, if any, of the laws actually really account for the child that's involved in the process. And what's so notable about these states with quote unquote well-developed surrogacy laws is that the requirements are minimal. So for example, intended parents are not required to undergo a background check, a home visit, or any sort of psychological screening in order to purchase a child through a surrogacy contract, which means that it's largely unregulated because we have no idea who these parents are or what their background is. Now, many of the clinics will require information in their forms, but the clinics are not required to report them to anyone. So again, if they don't do their due diligence, effectively anyone can have a child through surrogacy. This is very unlike our adoption laws in the United States, which require background checks, home visits, interviews with friends and family. And notably, our adoption laws are very clear that at no point can money change hands between the parents who were taking the child and the woman who has the child. But of course, in commercial surrogacy, it relies upon the premise that intended parents are paying a woman for the child that she conceives and gestates, whether or not she's genetically related to the child. Other states are in a bit of a vague zone, so they don't have explicit laws governing the practice of commercial surrogacy, but they don't prohibit it. So if there was a legal fight or disagreement between the surrogate and the intended parent, it would be up to the state's family court to decide who receives the child, who was in the right and who was in the wrong. So oftentimes surrogacy agencies will either not work in those states or only work in those states on limited basis because it's not a guarantee that they have any sort of legal protection. But it still happens, and oftentimes the courts do decide to enforce the contract as it stands. And then in the United States, we only have 2 states out of 50 that actually prohibit commercial surrogacy explicitly. This is Louisiana and Nebraska. The state of Michigan, as of until this year, also prohibited commercial surrogacy, but they recently just changed their laws to have a fully built out commercial surrogacy law. That again, the number one requirement for the intended parents is only that they have enough money to pay for it. The surrogate has to undergo a psychological check, but that's the extent of her background checks. So we have, again, very little knowledge of who these parents are entering into contracts and who the surrogates are who are serving them. This is all brokered by the clinics, who are obviously financially motivated to work with as many people as possible. And very few of them are actually thinking about what is the best scenario for the child to be in. So in the United States, we're obviously an international hotspot for surrogacy. We're one of the few nations that allows foreign nationals to come to the United States and use our services, our women, right, as American surrogates. So actually the United States and Ukraine, even during wartime Ukraine, stand out as the 2 countries globally that have some of the most open markets for commercial surrogacy for all foreign nationals. And the majority of those contracts actually take place in California. And California in particular really is the international hotspot in the United States. So as you can imagine, birth tourism is a massive billion-dollar market in the United States. Over the summer in July of 2023, the Society for Assisted Reproductive Technology, which is one of the main reproductive organizations that governs the practice in the United States, released a report of foreign nationals who come to the United States for surrogacy. And this data included 2014 to 2020, which was the most recent year that they had. And I can imagine that the numbers have continued to grow since 2020. But there were two findings in this study that were really, really telling. Well, actually three. The first is that of foreign nationals, 70% of them go to a clinic in California for services. The second is that Chinese nationals are by far the largest buyer of American surrogates and children. So Chinese nationals make up 14% of the market, and the next largest category is France at 3%. So China is more than 3 times larger than the next country coming to the United States for surrogacy services. And on top of that, the most common demographic to come to the United States for commercial surrogacy are Asian men over the age of 42. So this is a very odd demographic, as you can imagine. This doesn't really hit you as the sweet maternal figures who are looking for a surrogate, as is oftentimes presented, but is actually a very disturbing predicament that we find ourselves in the United States. There are entire agencies that are owned by Chinese affiliated individuals who used to live in China or still have citizenship in China. Major Chinese companies own large portions of our agencies here. And this really is a massive market for them, primarily for two reasons. The first is that the United States has birthright citizenship, which means that if your child is born in the United States, they gain and maintain the rights of US citizenship, regardless of who the parents are. So if a foreign national comes to the United States, rents the womb of American surrogate, that child, although not an American, not related to an American genetically, right? That child gets citizenship, even if they're going back to their foreign country to live with their intended parents, which means that those foreign nationals actually have a gateway to American citizenship through a green card visa when the child is 21. So that's a huge, that's of a lot of interest to Chinese nationals who have openly talked about wanting to have children with citizenship. And then the second is their declining birth rates. So surrogacy is illegal in China, but many Chinese nationals who are unable to find partners in China due to the lack of women that are there, or even their changes in like career and family, come to the US to have children by other means. And the last thing I'll say here, two things I'll say here, is that in the United States, the surrogacy market in particular is really driven, a lot of the money behind it is really driven by either celebrities who are looking to have children without actually bearing children through their own bodies, and male same-sex couples who cannot have a child without the womb of another woman. So one of the largest advocacy organizations is Men Having Babies, which is an organization wholly devoted to men finding out the best and cheapest way to rent a surrogate to have children for them. And so they lobby in all 50 states and in the in Congress as well. And then the final thing is that oftentimes surrogacy contracts are presented as this altruistic and kind experience where a young woman is helping another couple have children who can't have children by any other means. And while that certainly takes place, 98% of all contracts in the United States are commercial contracts. So these are contracts where surrogates are getting paid about $70,000 on average to birth a child for another person. Over all these contracts will cost about $150,000. So this is a big money business with lots of players benefiting from it. And then very briefly, because I see that I've come to almost the end of my time here, in the United States, Americans tend to view this practice either with ignorance. They're not familiar with the practice. They haven't thought about the practice and seem generally in favor of it, but I think largely just don't understand what they're thinking about. The second is that they're very permissive towards the practice. They believe in reproductive autonomy. They believe that an adult has the right to a child, which is incredibly problematic. And so they have no problem paying someone to have a child if you really want a child. And then you have religious Catholics and religious Protestants and others who do have moral and religious objections to the practice, as well as those who just have all of the concerns that Bernard laid out when it comes to the exploitation of children, harms to women, and so on. So when it comes to policies that we're considering right now, we are working with prominent Senate and House offices on the federal level to address the birth tourism aspect of foreign surrogacy. And so while surrogacy in the US is only governed by individual states, the federal government does have the right to prohibit foreign nationals from coming to the United States. And so that's the aspect of surrogacy that we're hoping to put a stop to, and actually have gained a lot of political interest behind based on our national security concerns. So similar to what Italy has done in the past, we're hoping we can prohibit foreign nationals from accessing commercial surrogacy and then focus on regulating and slowly abolishing the practice in the United States. But that will be a very slow incremental process based on the way that we think about surrogacy. But I'm happy to answer more questions and also dig into some more of the policy suggestions in Q&A.
Thank you so much, Emma, and thank you all, because I think it's great. The three of you represent the great political momentum that we are having here. I think that Bernard, with the Casablanca Declaration and all the intense activity that you're holding here and there, and in the conference in Rome, and then all the activity from the Casablanca has created a positive atmosphere, gathering people from different political backgrounds and so on. And then the bill passed in Italy. I think it's a great example. I remember the heartbeat bills in the US, that once one of them started, the other and the other and the other, there were many states quickly following. No? So I think that the initiative by the Italian government can be very helpful, and I'm very glad to know that also Louisiana and Nebraska have done similar bills prohibiting surrogate motherhood. I didn't know about that. So I think it's very good to have these great examples, and that's one of the important things for us in the Political Network for Values, to share these examples. So we will now open the colloquium, and I'm glad to see that we have here Maria del Rosario Guerra. She's a former member of Senate in Colombia. She was very much involved with these issues in Colombia, and I will give you the floor in a moment, but I would like to greet also Luis Peral, also former member of Senate from Spain and member of our network as well. We have Lisbeth Hernandez from Mexico. She has been also member of Senate in Mexico. Alice Muchiri from Kenya. She's in the Catholic Legislators Network in Kenya. And we have also Angela Gandra from Brazil. She has been a secretary for the family in the former government of Brazil. So I don't know if I'm missing someone, but anyway, please feel free to ask for the floor, and we will give you the voice to start the colloquium. Luis, has levantado la mano. Okay, so I will.
Luis, you picked up your hand, I think.
And after.
So I'm going to give Maria del Rosario Guerra the microphone, and then Luis.
Muy buenos días, Lola. Un saludo para
Good morning, Lola. Hello to you and to all your team at Political Network for Values. Thank you again for inviting us to this seminar. I think this topic is very important and is very relevant. First of all, because in 2 of April, the Holy See issued this document, this letter, called Human Dignity, in which not only reaffirms that this rejects of abortion and euthanasia, but in an explicit way rejects surrogacy and invites precisely all the countries to reject that practice. So I think is very relevant, all of the presentations today, to invite to this movement of what it was signed in Casablanca, this international movement of a great summit. There should be a great summit to reject surrogacy. I want to share with you the experience of Colombia, because today Colombia doesn't have a ruling frame for surrogacy. So in 3 occasions in the Senate, I promoted a law project to prohibit and abolish surrogacy. But 2 groups were the ones who were in the way and blocked this project. So these 2 groups that Emma just talked about, the gay community, and for the people who are sick and cannot have children and look into surrogacy, the exit. So there is a sentence in 2009 that allows surrogacy, but it's not a law, that allows it to women who have been mothers before, that are young, that are committed, that it's not their egg, that they have to give back the baby and they have to be nationals from Colombia. But we are preoccupied that surrogacy has been growing in the last few years, especially in Bogota in the last year. That we have identified that there's an alliance between the clinics, the fertility clinics, the clinics that they have GeoBin services, to promote a package that is about $60,000 worth, that allow foreigners, that is forbidden, that come to foreigners to come to the egg bank to buy an egg and sign a contract with a woman that rents her womb, and for the clinics, the GeoBin, so they can have the birth of the baby there. So when in Colombia a baby is born, it's registered. The baby is registered with the names of dad and mom. And at that moment, the baby is registered as a known father only. But now there are more lawsuits against those birth registrations. So to be able to register their babies, and sometimes it's 2 men who are gay, and it's not just a baby for a couple. So each one bring their sperm and then they buy an egg. And they get 2 babies, so in case they get divorced, so each one can get a child. So immigration in Colombia is the entity that is preoccupied of foreigners coming in and out of the country. They should be preoccupied and worried about the tourism that comes into Colombia for this surrogacy issue. And kids are leaving with a dad and not a mom. Also, lawsuits have been increasing to avoid
poder
biological
jurídico. Entonces,
mother,
es un tema de la
the
mayor
surrogates
importancia, la mayor
for not
preocupación a
having
nivel
rights over the
jurídico.
baby.
En Colombia,
So there are
ustedes
lawsuits in
se
that
en las
regard.
páginas web y claramente
So if you go
para
to
una yegua
websites and
o una de
you can
alquiler
see that
se
women
está
are treated
promoviendo.
as
Igualmente, como lo dijo
horses in
Emma,
rent.
actrices son las que
Actresses
más promueven,
also are the ones who
actrices,
promote
por
it the most,
supuesto, población homosexual. Entonces,
and also
total
homosexual
respaldo a la
population as
iniciativa
well.
de una
So,
convención que prohíba el
so I
alquiler de
think,
vientres
yes, I
y
support that
dispuesto a
there
seguir
should be an
trabajando en Colombia en
international
lo que sea
summit
necesario
to
para
talk
que
about
esta
abolishing
práctica que hace parte de
surrogacy
la trata de personas pueda ser
that equates
prohibida.
to
Nuevamente,
the
gracias y sigo
traffic
atenta
of
aquí a las
people.
otras experiencias.
Thank you all, and I'm here listening to everyone else's
Muchísimas
opinions.
gracias, María del Rosario. Voy a
Thank
dejar
you,
que Ivonne
Maria del
continúe
Rosario. I'm going to
moderando
see
el
Yvonne,
coloquio.
I'm going to let her
Gracias.
moderate.
Muchas gracias, María del Rosario. Ahora seguimos con Lisbeth Hernández.
So now we're with
¿Quién levantó
Lisbeth
la mano
Hernandez.
solamente? No, Luis estaba primero. Sí,
Luis
perdón.
Peral, sí.
Luis was
que
first, I
ha
think.
sido
Yeah,
senador en
go ahead.
España y es
Muchas
miembro de
gracias.
hace mucho tiempo.
Quiero
Thank you.
mandarles un mensaje de esperanza desde
I
España.
want to give
Un
you
país
a
donde
message
en
of
este siglo
hope.
XXI hemos tenido muy malas leyes que han
We have
impulsado el aborto y
very
la
bad
eutanasia,
laws
pero donde la
of
gestación subrogada
euthanasia,
ha dejado de ser, al menos en mi opinión,
but
una de
surrogacy
las
has been,
banderas de la izquierda
it has been
progre,
one of
comillas,
the
que
left-wing
defiende la ideología de género.
politics that
Y ha dejado de serlo
they
precisamente
defend
porque se ha encontrado con una
the gender
oposición
agenda,
desleal por
but
parte
now they
de
have stopped
mujeres
it because
feministas, de
there's
partidos
been
de izquierdas,
a big opposition
especialmente las
for
que durante
women,
muchos
feminist
años han
women,
acreditado una defensa de la mujer y de
the
los
ones
derechos
who
de
have
la
been
mujer.
defending the rights
La
of
gestación
women.
subrogada en España está
So
prohibida desde el
surrogacy
año
in Spain
2006
is forbidden
por la
since
ley sobre técnicas de
2006
reproducción humana asistida.
by
Hubo
a
varios
law of
intentos en torno a
techniques
los
of
años 2016-2017.
reproductive rights.
Alguno me tocó vivirlo.
Uh,
Justamente
I've
después
lived
de que
some
el
of these
Consejo de Europa
processes. So
votase en el año
after the parliament voted
2012 una
in
declaración en contra
2012 a
de la
declaration
gestación subrogada.
against
Unos días después de que el
surrogacy,
Parlamento Europeo
after that,
el
the
17 de
European
marzo de
Parliament
2016
in
rechazó la
March
gestación subrogada
2016
como un atentado a los
rejected
derechos de la mujer
surrogacy
y del niño, pues en la Asamblea
because
de
of
Madrid,
the
dirigida por
alienation of
la
women and
Asamblea de la
kids.
Región de Madrid, se presentó una
So
proposición
in Madrid, there
de
was an
resolución
assembly
de un
and there was a
partido
motion
liberal, hoy prácticamente
of
desaparecido, que se llama Ciudadanos,
of
instando a que el
of a
gobierno de la Región de Madrid se
non-existing
dirigiese al gobierno de
political
España
party now
para que
called
se
Citizens.
regulase la gestación subrogada.
They were asking
Bueno, la cosa
the
salió mal,
regulation of
salió mal porque
surrogacy. It turned
3
out really
diputados
bad
del
because
Partido
3
Popular,
deputies
partido al que yo
of the
pertenezco,
popular
nos negamos a
party,
seguir las
which
instrucciones de nuestro
I
grupo
am in,
y se perdió la votación. O sea, la
and
votación
then the voting was
fue apoyada,
lost.
fue votada en contra por la izquierda, fue
So
votada
it
a
was
favor
voted
por
against
la gente de Ciudadanos y
by
del
the
Partido
left-wing
Popular,
parties
excepto 3 diputados,
and
y se
the
perdió. Y
citizens
fuimos
and
sancionados cada uno con 600 euros.
and the
Lo pagamos
PP
muy
voted
a gusto,
in
vamos,
pro, but we lost
francamente muy a gusto,
the votes.
pero ese día cumplimos con nuestras conciencias.
So
Y la
we
verdad es
voted
que
with our consciences, but we
el
lost,
tema
unfortunately.
prácticamente, en mi opinión, por lo menos, ha
But the
desaparecido
topic,
de
I
la
think
agenda
it's
de
gone
los que
now
defienden
from the
ciertas
agenda, from the
ideologías de
ones who
género en España.
defend
Fue muy
the
importante
gender agenda or the gender
el
ideology.
acuerdo del Comité de Bioética de España, prácticamente por
The
unanimidad,
bioethical
mayo de 2017,
group
que
in
consideró
the
que
government
todo
in
contrato de
Spain
gestación
consider
por
that
sustitución
all
entraña una explotación
contracts
de la
of
mujer y del niño
surrogacy,
a los intereses superiores del
they
menor.
say that
Y
they
entre
declare
las
that it's an
propuestas que hizo
exploitation
era que
of
se
the baby
abordase
and the
el
woman.
objeto de esta reunión de ahora, la prohibición universal de la maternidad
So
subrogada.
they called
Entonces,
for
yo creo
an abolition for
estamos en buen
surrogacy.
camino.
So I
España
think
es
we are
un
in a good
país
path.
donde,
Spain
en teoría,
is
este
a
tema
place
debería
where
tener cierta
this
aceptación
topic
porque
could have
una
certain
natalidad muy baja, de las más bajas de
acceptance
Europa,
because we have a
pero
very low
les ha salido
natality
mal,
rate,
les ha salido mal.
but
Y
they
entonces,
haven't been
en
successful.
España no tenemos la circunstancia de
So in
otros
Spain, we
países
don't have
más
the same situation
con
like
una
other
situación
countries
económica peor, donde se
with a
pueden
worse
encontrar
economical
estas
situation in
situaciones de
which
granjas de alquiler,
where they can have
y de
entire
explotación
farms of
que se
surrogacy
puede
and all
defender,
this
que se puede
exploitation that can
combatir
be
como un nuevo neocolonialismo de personas, como se ha dicho aquí, personas de países
it can be
ricos
promoted
que
as a
quieren
it's
explotar a
like
la
a
mujer y a los
colonialism
pobres.
that want to
Nosotros eso no lo
exploit
podemos
women
decir,
in poor
pero
countries. We
podemos
can't say
responderlo
that, but we
públicamente.
can support
Muchas gracias.
the people who are in this fight. Thank you.
Muchas
Luis, me
gracias.
parece interesante, perdón, que avanzar tal vez en esa prohibición universal, ¿no? Como un paso más, a ver si es en España como lo que se ha hecho en Italia, es decir, que no se pueda, no solo en España, sino que no se pueda tampoco legalizar a
legalize
personas o sea, nacimientos de gestación
people
subrogada en el
from
extranjero, ¿no? Ese sería un paso adelante
from
que
surrogacy, born from
cabría recorrer
surrogacy, to legalize them
todavía, ¿no? En
in
España.
their country. So
Entiendo.
I understand this.
¿Es así?
Is that it?
Perdona, Luis. No, era una pregunta. O sea, está
Luis,
prohibida,
it was a question.
pero
Is
se
it
puede
prohibited to?
todavía
Can we
realizar en
say
el
that
extranjero y venir a España, ¿no?
that
Se
you
puede
can all
realizar en el extranjero y
surrogacy
venir a
can be made
España,
in the
y de hecho tenemos unos casos que el propio
in a
Comité de
foreign country
Bioética
and come back to
expresaba
Spain?
que
Yeah, they
hay
they
que
can do this,
regularizar
but
ciertos casos de parejas
you should
españolas que han tenido niños en el
regulate
extranjero y
several
que tampoco
couples in
pueden quedar
Spain that have
desamparadas en el registro civil. Efectivamente, se puede avanzar
children
en eso.
Gracias.
abroad
Gracias.
and they cannot be
Bernard, no sé si
unregistered.
quieres comentar algo que
Bernard,
aprendiste.
I don't know if you'd like
Sí, perdón. Efectivamente, en España
to
tengo
say something.
entendido de que hay una
Effectively,
circular o lo equivalente a una
in
circular
Spain,
que
there's
dice que
like a
efectivamente los
message
niños
that
nacidos en el extranjero son
definitely
reconocidos en los consulados españoles.
children born
Lo
outside
que
of
yo
Spain
pienso que, o sea,
are
yo
citizens
entiendo
in
lo que usted
Spain.
dice,
I
Luis,
understand what you say, Luis,
pero
but
al mismo tiempo yo pienso que en
at the
España
same
todavía el
time,
tema
I
no está
think in
tan
Spain,
zanjado, porque por ejemplo la opinión pública, el caso
this
de
topic
Ana
is not
Obregón, todos estos
as
casos como
taken
que
as
sí van
like public
generando un
opinion of
ambiente
Ana
como
Obregón.
pro mercado
They're
maternidad
creating
subrogada,
an
y también esto
environment
de que se sigan
of a
reconociendo,
market
obviamente
of
nadie está diciendo que
surrogacy.
esos niños
So
tienen que quedar
no one
apátridas o
is
abandonados,
no one is
pero
saying
sí
that
el hecho
they
de que
should
se
be
reconozca la ley
made
extranjera en
unknown
materia de subrogación, a
or
mí
not
sí me
have a
parece un problema.
nationality,
Yo no tengo la solución de qué
the
hacer con cada
law
caso, porque a
making
veces
of these
uno de los
cases
padres es padre
is different.
biológico,
I don't know
aportó
what
sus
to
gametos, ¿no?
do
Pero yo
which
creo que
is each
efectivamente también lo que
biological
decía
case,
Lola,
but
¿no? Y en
effectively,
Italia,
as Lola
que
said,
está ese
in
discurso
Italy,
contra la maternidad
there's a
subrogada, pero falta,
discourse
yo creo
about
que en Italia todavía falta
against
un poco
surrogacy, but
de ir más hacia
we're
lo que es una
missing
abolición universal contratado, ¿no? Que
a
un poco fue
universal
lo que
abolition
nosotros con
or
Casablanca le
universal
pedimos a la
contract
Santa
about
Sede, que obviamente la Santa Sede estaba
like the
contra la
Holy See
maternidad
said.
surrogada, pero el tema
The
es
Holy
ir a
See is
promover
against
un tratado internacional
surrogacy, but
en la agenda
we should
internacional, que es muy
propose
distinto, ¿no? Pasar de
an
que en Francia
international
nos pasa lo
agenda.
mismo, ¿no? Que en el fondo, al
And
final,
France
la
happens to
maternidad
say,
surrogada
like for example, surrogacy in
no está
France,
reconocida.
it's
Pero bueno,
not
lo que decía Emma, que al final en
acknowledged,
California,
but
después de los
in
nacionales chinos, vienen los
California, as
franceses,
Emma
¿no?
said,
Entonces sí hay una cosa
Chinese
muy importante y hay
foreigners
una relación
from the
entre lo que
French
se hace afuera y lo
foreigners.
que se hace adentro, sobre todo con países
So
más,
there's
entre
an
comillas,
important
ricos como
relationship
España,
between
los de Europa,
what
que tienen ese
countries
poder de ir
done
a pagar
inside and
una
what
maternidad
you
surrogada
do
en
outside of the
Ucrania o en el
country.
sudeste asiático,
Since you
etcétera.
can
Eso,
go outside of
gracias,
or travel
Ivonne.
abroad to have your
Gracias, Bernard. Emma, if
children
you want to say
or
something at any point of the
surrogacy.
conversation, please
Emma,
feel
do you
free
want
to
to say
talk.
something
Vale,
along the
ahora
conversation?
es el turno de Lisbeth Hernández, que también fue
So
parte del Congreso en
it's
México. Adelante.
Hola, muy buen día. Muchas
hello,
gracias
good
por la
morning.
suma de esfuerzos que
Thank you
estamos
for
haciendo en este tema.
adding of
El
efforts
tiempo que
of
fui senadora de
in
la
this topic.
República,
When I was
dentro de la
senator of the
Comisión de la
Republic,
Familia que me tocó
in the family
crear,
commission that
hicimos
I had
muchos
to create,
esfuerzos
we did
porque
made a
este
lot of
tema
efforts
pues no se
that this
legalizara. Sin
topic
embargo,
is not
pues hay
legalized.
antecedentes
So
en México,
there
lamentablemente,
some things
en
that have happened in
Tabasco desde
Mexico, in Tabasco, for example,
1997
in
y también
1997,
en el estado de
and
Coahuila,
in
donde es
Coahuila,
permitido la
where
maternidad
it is
subrogada o el
allowed, surrogacy is
alquiler de
allowed,
vientres. Pero también tenemos dos
but we also
estados
have
que
two
literalmente lo
states that
prohibieron. Y eso
prohibited
es una ganancia
this,
porque
and
en
that's
realidad
a
vemos que en la
win-win scenario
práctica
because in
México se ha
practice,
vuelto
in
un
the
turismo
reality,
incluso de
Mexico
alquiler de
has become
vientres.
a
Sin embargo,
surrogacy
también tenemos
tourism,
estados como San Luis
but we
Potosí y
have
Querétaro
states like
que
San Luis Potosí
literalmente
and
sus
Querétaro
códigos
that
civiles y
literally
familiares
their civil
lo han
codes and
prohibido.
familiar codes have
Sin embargo, se
prohibited
ha hecho
this
este
surrogacy
esfuerzo
topics.
porque a nivel
However,
federal
they've
no
made
se
an effort,
promuevan
so
leyes que puedan atentar
laws are
contra de
not
la Constitución
promoted
y que traiga
against the
aparejado que
Constitution,
todas las
and this
constituciones de las
has
entidades federativas
linked
de México tengan que
the
reformar.
state
Le
laws have
llaman
to reform
derechos humanos
rights,
también,
these human rights, that
y hay
so-called
dualidad de
human rights,
opiniones
and
que nos
their
dicen que hay un
diversity of
derecho
opinions
de
in which
tener
they
familia a
say
través
that
de la
some
maternidad
have
subrogada y lo comentan como un
rights
derecho
to
humano.
have
Pero
family
también habemos
through
quienes creemos
surrogacy,
que
and
esta
this is a
práctica
human
debe de
right.
prohibirse
And there are
y que
also
no debe de
us who believe
avanzar,
that this
porque
practice should be
México ha
prohibited,
tenido
because and it
lamentablemente
shouldn't be
y
allowed
de
to
forma
continue,
clandestina
because
un abuso
Mexico,
de trata de
they've had
personas para poder lograr este fin. Sin embargo, vimos que
they've
el
been pushing
pasado
to
marzo, en
achieve
el
this
marco
goals.
del Día Internacional de la
So,
Mujer,
and
se
we saw
celebró
in March
en la Cámara de Diputados un
the,
foro
the
sobre el tema de la provisión de
Chamber
la
of
maternidad
Deputies,
subrogada
there was
mediante
a
cualquier
forum about
modalidad o acuerdo. Y hay un grupo
surrogacy,
de mujeres
motherhood
que
through
han,
surrogacy, through
se
any
han
means, and
negado
there's a group of
precisamente
women who
a
have
que, a
denied
pesar de los exhortos de la
that
Suprema Corte de
even
Justicia de la Nación de
the,
México,
the,
que
the
han
messages of the
exhortado a
Supreme
las
Court in
entidades
Mexico that have
federativas para que modifiquen sus legislaciones
forced
locales,
the states
hemos visto un
to
grupo
change their
fuerte de mujeres
legislative
que hemos logrado hacer conciencia
presentations.
de que
There
este
has been
tema
an important
viola incluso los derechos humanos de la mujer y del
the
interés
important
superior
part
del
in
niño,
which this
el
violates
interés a la identidad, el interés a la vida digna.
the best
Y pues
interest of the
bueno,
child, the best
es
interest of
importante
a
que
child's
hagamos este tipo
life.
de coloquios, ¿verdad?
And
Porque
it's important that we
podemos
have
sumar esfuerzos a través de estrategias
forums that we can
internacionales de
create
hacer
or
conciencia
create efforts
y también
of
a nivel
making
regional y a
it
nivel local.
consciously in
Hemos
every
visto pues que a
country,
México se le ve
and
como
locally
un
and
lugar
regionally. Mexico
turístico
is seen
incluso
as a
atractivo
tourism
y más
place
económico para
and
poder
more
lograr estos
economical place
fines
in which
de la
they can
maternidad subrogada y con ello vemos
accomplish
un abuso al
this
cuerpo de
topics,
la
and
mujer por varios
we see
motivos, porque ella
an
misma
abuse
se presta por
against
situación vulnerable
the women's
económica,
body,
porque también es
because
forzada por
there's
incluso su
a
esposo
economical
o su
vulnerability,
pareja,
because
o
they are
porque
forced
también es secuestrada para estos
by their
fines.
partners, or
Entonces
because
hay
they
quienes
are
dicen tenemos que
kidnapped
regularla
for this
para
ends.
controlarla.
So we
Y
have
hay quienes
to
decimos
regulate it to
no
control it.
podemos regular,
And there are
tenemos que
some of us who
prohibirlo
say
porque
we
esto se
cannot
va a
regulate it,
convertir
we have to
en que
prohibit,
México sea una granja
because
de
this
niños
will
del
become
mundo y que
this
sea un
will
lugar
create a
preferente para
Mexico
esta
in which
industria
becomes
que está
a farm of
moviéndose por las
children
redes
for the
sociales de
world.
forma acelerada. Esto es
And
un tema global que nos interesa a
this
todos
industry
y
that
yo
is
por lo pronto en
giving
México pues
great steps
luchamos porque
against
no se le llame que México
humanity.
pueda ser el útero del mundo y que
We're
encuentren un
trying
destino para
for
que,
Mexico not to
así
be
como lo
called
ha
the
sido otros
uterus of the
países, ¿verdad?
world,
Como Ucrania
and that
y que hemos visto que ha sido increíble lo que ha estado
we've
pasando en
seen
estas
what
regiones.
these
Pero bueno,
other
vemos que
regions, what
también
has
ya se ha
happened in these
blindado
other
Colombia y
regions,
eso nos da
and
mucho
we've
gusto.
seen
Y
how
aquí pues estamos
Colombia
haciendo
has
un
been
frente en este
fighting against
tema,
this,
todos los
and we're
grupos que
fighting
estamos a
against
favor
this
de
here in
vida, de
Mexico.
familia y
All
libertad
of the
religiosa en
pro-life
México.
groups, pro-freedom
Estamos
of
dando nuestra
speech,
mejor
pro-freedom of
batalla y
religion.
trabajando a
We're
nivel
trying to do our best,
de los
and we're
senadores, de
trying
los
to
diputados, de los
work through
legisladores.
senators,
Mucho por
through
hacer. Ahorita
deputies.
estamos en un cambio de
There's a lot to
gobierno.
do. We're now
Entonces,
in a change of government
hemos
right now
pedido a
in
los
Mexico,
candidatos
and
a los diferentes
we've asked
puestos de
the
elección popular
candidates
que pongan en la
in
agenda,
every
en el Plan Nacional de Desarrollo y en
election today that
los
they put
planes
in their
estatales de
agenda and
gobierno,
their
así
plans
como en políticas
and
públicas, la
state,
perspectiva de
federal
familia y la defensa de
plans,
la
the
vida.
perspective, the
Y esto
family
es algo que
perspective,
pues
the
vamos a
defense of
tener que
life, the
estar
defense of family,
trabajando,
and
¿verdad?
we're going to have
Porque
to
espero que en
work
cambia la legislatura, no avanzó,
because
terminó esta
the
legislatura
legislation changes, it didn't
de
advance.
México y
This
a pesar
legislature
de que hubo
ends
avances para
this month,
varias
these days.
iniciativas para prohibirlas, pero no hubo el acuerdo
There
suficiente para que
were
pudiese
some
aprobarse
advances to
las
prohibit
leyes
this,
que
but there
fueron
were no
presentadas.
enough
Esperemos que la siguiente
talks
Cámara
to
de
talk
Diputados y
about
Senadores
prohibition of this.
que
We hope that the next
tomaría posesión
chamber
el 1
of
de
deputies and
septiembre,
chamber of
pues
senators
podamos seguir teniendo
on
este tema en la
September,
agenda
we
para
can
que
still have
no
this topic in the
camine
agenda,
a favor
so it
de
doesn't
legalizarse, sino
advance
por el contrario, que se
to the
pueda prohibir.
legalization of
Necesitamos
this,
más
but on the contrary,
hombres y
to
mujeres
prohibit
valientes que se
about
atrevan a dar las
surrogacy.
mejores
We need
batallas
more
sociales,
brave women
culturales,
and men
políticas
that can
en los
make these fights,
congresos
that
para
give these fights,
detener este tema. Es un tema
fight
también que
against
tiene que ver
these
con
topics.
educación.
This
Es
is
un
a
tema
topic
que
that
tiene
has
que ver con el
also to do with
fortalecimiento de la
education,
familia,
with
que tiene que ver
strengthening
con
of the
desarrollo
family,
económico, con
with
principios y
economical
valores
development,
éticos, morales,
with
incluso espirituales.
ethical and
Entonces,
spiritual
pues bueno, la experiencia
rights
en México
and
ahorita es
principles.
que está
So the
detenido el
experience in
tema.
Mexico is that
Esperemos
the
que no
topic is on
avance en la
standby.
siguiente
We
legislatura
hope that
y
it
como
doesn't advance
sociedad
on
civil
next
también hemos hecho un
legislature,
llamado
but
importante a
as
levantar la voz y a formar
as
parte de los
civils, we've
parlamentos
also
abiertos para llevar
asked to raise a
esta
voice
voz donde
and
hemos visto
to
el
give this
abuso,
open parliament
en
the
verdad,
topic
no solamente
to
de la mujer,
where
sino
we've
hay una
seen
cadena
the
de
abuse
corrupción
of
entre
women, but not
autoridades,
only abuse
entre
of women, but
médicos,
abuse of power
enfermeras,
in authorities,
entre
medics,
notarios
doctors,
públicos que dan
nurses,
fe de los contratos, entre
lawyers,
incluso
lawmakers, and
oficinas de relaciones exteriores
exterior
que facilitan los
relationship
pasaportes
secretaries,
de
and
estos bebés
that they
y que
facilitate
pues vemos que no
passports
solamente
for
es algo
these
que se da de
babies,
forma
but
interna en
it's not
México,
something
sino
that
que
is
también es un destino
only
a
of
nivel
Mexico, but
internacional para
it's an
parejas que
international
quieren
topic that
pues rentar los
for
úteros y
couples
sobre
that
todo
have
las
that want
parejas
to
del
rent
mismo sexo. Entonces,
uterus,
pues bueno,
mainly
este es algo que
couples of
lamentamos
the same
mucho,
sex.
que tengamos que estar
We're
forzando, ¿verdad?
working
De forma
a lot.
social, pero es importante levantar la voz. Así que, pues desde México seguimos haciendo este gran esfuerzo. Muchas
we're
gracias
making
a
this
todos.
effort
Y pues
to
creo que
stop
como
this, to
estrategia
prohibit this, and
tenemos
thank you
que
everyone that
presentar
has helped with this. Thank
iniciativas
you everyone that is
ciudadanas en los
here, and we have
congresos
to
y
present
pues sobre
this
todo pues también en la
civil
Organización de los
initiatives,
Estados Americanos, en la
and
OEA y en
also
la ONU, pues
in the
tenemos
OEA,
que levantar la voz,
in
así
the
como los
UN, where we
parlamentos
have to raise our
europeos, el
voice
Parlamento
as a
Latinoamericano
European
y
Parliament,
bueno, ser una
Latin
extensión
American
en este
Parliament,
tema.
and
Muchas
become an
gracias a todos.
extension in this topic. Thank you
Muchas
very much,
gracias,
everyone.
Lisbeth. Y hablando de
Thank you, Lisbeth.
iniciativas,
Talking
tenemos
about
aquí a María
initiatives,
Fernanda
we've
Flores,
got Maria
que
Fernanda
ella
Flores,
también nos va a contar un poco
that
lo que están haciendo
she's
en
going to
Honduras,
talk
desde
about
Casa Alianza Honduras,
what
que
they're
puso una
making
iniciativa
in
ciudadana que se ha
Honduras.
presentado en el Congreso. Y
There's
luego
a
seguimos
civil
con Ángela,
initiative
que
that
es la
has been presented
exsecretaria para la familia
in the
en
Congress, and we'll
Brasil.
continue with
Y María
Angela
Fernanda.
in Brazil. Thank you, Maria Fernanda.
Hola, muy buenos días a todos.
Hello, good morning, everyone.
La verdad que me emociona mucho porque es un tema
I
que
was
lo
really
vengo
excited
trabajando desde el año
to
pasado
participate in this
con la Clínica de Interés Público y Derechos
webinar
Humanos de la
because we've
Universidad
been
Nacional.
working
Pero actualmente
a lot
me
from the
encuentro
last year.
trabajando en Casa Alianza como oficial jurídico y
Actually, we've been working with this topic,
presentamos una
and
iniciativa de
we presented
propuesta
an
de reforma
initiative
del Código
of
Penal, no solo a Casa Alianza,
a
sino que
proposal
también
of reform
organizaciones
to the
de sociedad
penal
civil
code,
e instituciones del Estado.
not only a civil
Presentamos la
presentation,
propuesta
but a
para que
penal
esta práctica sea catalogada
proposal.
también como trata de personas y explotación sexual,
This
debido a todas las formas que
presentation
existen
is
en la
to
materia
change
ciudadana.
the
Entonces,
topic
la iniciativa es
not only as
reciente, sin
a
embargo,
surrogacy, but
muchas de las instituciones, principalmente el
kidnapping
Ministerio Público, se ha
and slavery.
interesado, es algo que le llamó mucho la
The
atención,
public
e incluso
ministry has
hago
been interested
las palabras de
in this
verdad que
topic,
dijo
and
en su intervención las hago también mías, porque él dijo algo muy importante, que muchos de los países aquí en Latinoamérica
many of
dicen que no
our
es un
countries in
problema
Latin
que les
America
concierne a ellos o que tengan ese problema dentro de su sociedad, pero es un mercado que va creciendo.
know that
Y
they don't
evidentemente lo
have
hemos visto
maybe
en
in
los
their
últimos
cities
años en
this
Latinoamérica,
type
como
of
el caso de
problems, but
México y de
it's
Colombia, que
a
han
market that
tenido
is
estos
growing
problemas
day
no
by day.
solo en estados
In Mexico and
jurídicos que crean,
Colombia,
sino que también la
they're been
protección a
having
los niños y a las niñas que están por
this
nacer.
problem. So
Entonces,
we're
las
trying
hago
to make
mías también porque en Honduras se tiene
this
como mucha
topic
consideración
as a
de
topic
que
to
no
prevent
es
or
algo que nos
protect
interese
the
o
child
algo que no vaya a
who is
crecer
about
dentro de
to
Honduras.
be
Sin
born.
embargo, sí
It's
se
not
tiene
something that
registrado
is
ciertos casos,
not going to
pero que
grow
hasta
in
el día de
some
hoy
countries.
todavía seguimos
It's something
indagando
that
cuáles
is
son esos casos porque se
that we've
mantienen
been
muy
trying to study
a lo bajo, o sea, no salen, no se exponen estos
cases
casos,
have
no hay
been presented
estadísticas,
with these
entonces es
topics
un
because
mercado
they don't
que va a seguir
appear in public
creciendo y
statistics
que es
or
necesario
public
que
references, but
que existe una prohibición
we have
desde
to
ya.
investigate.
Entonces,
So
con esta
we're
iniciativa
trying
eso
to
es lo que
make
se está
this
creando.
a
Que
prohibition
antes de que vengan los
from the
conflictos
beginning.
a Honduras y que esto se pueda
Before the
crecer
conflicts
más
or
de
this
lo que
type
ya
of
están
conflicts
empezando a
come to
crecer con todos
Honduras,
estos casos que están
and they
clandestinos, que
become
todavía no
worse,
tenemos mucho conocimiento, pues que ya existe una
we're trying to
prohibición que
prevent
pueda
this.
prohibir esta práctica
So
en todas sus
before they come
modalidades,
here
¿no?
with this type of
Justamente
laws,
yo en Casa Alianza
there
trabajo todos
is
estos
already a
casos
prohibition
de
against
trata de
this
personas y abuso
type
sexual
of
para protección de
topics
niñas
like
y
surrogacy
también de las, o sea, de niños que
the
ya han
sexual
cumplido 18
trafficking
años y todo
of
esto,
children.
pero es importante porque muchas de las
So
modalidades que ahora
this
están
is
creando los tratantes, perdón, son mucho más modernos. Y justamente la maternidad subrogada es
associations
una de
that are
estas modalidades,
making
¿no?
this
Que es mucho más moderna y que
surrogacy
permite pues
treatments.
hacer ver que no
They
es
are
una
made
trata,
themselves like
que es algo mucho más legal por medio de un
type of
contrato, cuando
modern,
sabemos
quote
que aún
unquote,
así se vulneran
modern, and
los
there's
derechos tanto de
no
las mujeres como
trafficking
de
of
los niños.
girls, no trafficking of humans.
Porque no existe un tal altruismo
modern
dentro de la
processes.
maternidad subrogada, porque siempre,
There's no
probablemente a la
altruism
madre
in the
o a la,
surrogacy
sí, a la
because
madre que está gestando no se le dé este dinero, pero a la empresa y a la agencia que promueve la maternidad subrogada,
we're trying to make that
entonces
the mother
estos
that
son
is
los primeros pasos que estamos
receiving
dando
this
como Honduras.
surrogacy is not
Esperamos que
giving
esta
this
iniciativa pues pueda
this
tomar una
money.
fuerza
So
mayor
we
en
think
lo que
this
resta del
initiative
año.
will
Siempre hay
have
que seguir
a
presionando,
greater
siempre hay que
strength.
seguir
So we
haciendo
have to push
incidencia
and push in the
para
rest
que pues esta
of the year.
problemática sea
So
ajustada
this
en toda
problematic
Latinoamérica, que es lo
is
mucho que
is
muy,
not
muy, pero muy importante, y
taken
evitar que todas estas
to
cosas
all
que están
Latin
pasando tanto
American
en
to
México
avoid
como Colombia,
all these things that
pues
in
puedan suceder
happening
en
in
los demás
Mexico
países
or
de
in
la
Colombia can happen in the rest of the countries in
Gracias,
Latin
María
America.
Fernanda. Muy bien, se
Thank you,
acaba de
María
sumar
Fernanda.
Pellerín Castillo, que fue el ministro de Energías en República Dominicana. Gracias por unirte. Y bueno, ahora tiene la palabra Ángela Gandra, que fue exsecretaria de Estado para la
Giving
Familia en
the
Brasil.
microphone to
Adelante.
Ángela Gandra, who is the representative of family in Brazil.
Bueno, buenas tardes, es una alegría estar
Good
con vosotros.
afternoon.
Muchas gracias por
It's
traer
a great thing to be
tema.
here with you. Thank
Y
you for
Lord
having
es
this
una persona de
this
verdad
topic,
complementa
this
todos también, ¿no?
and all the
Entonces,
personalities
en
that have
Brasil, ¿no?
complemented
Tenemos
this. So in
prohibida
Brazil, we have
la maternidad
prohibited
por subrogación,
the
pero
surrogacy,
permitida sin
but
fins lucrativos,
allowed
lo
without
que llamamos
lucrative
barriga solidaria,
ends,
barriga solidaria, así,
what we
vientre
call barriga
solidario,
solidaria.
que es
So it's
definido en casos concretos, en
solidary
condiciones médicas
womb.
concretas, por el
So
Consejo Federal de Medicina.
this is
No
given
hay
for
una legislación prácticamente, pero en algunas
concrete
circunstancias
cases,
médicas
special
comprobadas
circumstances
con
in which
condiciones dadas por el Consejo Nacional
mothers
Federal de
with
Medicina,
certain
se puede
conditions,
hacer la práctica,
we can have
que se llama
the
de
practice.
doadoras de vientre temporales, ¿no?
So
Y
temporal
se puede
temporal
cobrar.
wombs,
Y
they
después
cannot
de
charge
la
any money
aprobación
for
de
this, but
los matrimonios
after
homosexuales,
the
entonces
approbation
esta
of
práctica está dirigida a ellos, ¿no?
homosexual
Porque
marriages,
necesitan el
this
vientre, ¿no?
practice is
Y
given
también
to them
es preparado
because they need
por
the
el
womb,
Consejo, ¿no?
and
Y una
it's prepared for
legislación
the
más
council.
específica y también la
There's not a
documentación
specific
después
law,
de
and they don't
Pero
need
lo que
a
vemos
specific
en realidad,
documentation.
y eso ha
So
sido
what
una
we
cosa que ha
see
hecho la
really,
declaración
and what we've
de
seen in the
Casablanca, porque
declaration of
hemos traído,
Casablanca Declaration is
traer después de la declaración el año
after the
pasado en
declaration
Marruecos y después
in
ahora, ¿no? Con
last
el
year
documento
and
también de
now
Roma y todo, ¿no? Que hay una práctica de verdad que es utilitarista, no solo de hombres con hombres, pero también una práctica y hasta por razones estéticas hoy, ¿no? Entonces, se está levantando,
this topic has
pero
been
el interés
risen
mayor en Brasil es ideológico, ¿no? De que los matrimonios conflictivos pueden tener a sus hijos, ¿no?
so
Pero
after this,
agradezco mucho
they can have their
el
children.
evento de Roma que ha iluminado también no solo
After
estos
the event
aspectos,
in Rome,
y quería
that hasn't
solo
taken
compartir una
only these
cosa
aspects. I'd like
porque
to
sé que
share
pueden hasta
just
rezar por eso,
because
pero el Consejo Federal de Medicina tiene fuerza acá, ¿no?
the
Y ha
Medicine
hecho
Federal
ahora
Council
recientemente, que es
here
nuestra
in Brazil,
preocupación en el momento,
our
¿no?
preoccupation
Es
right
que
now is that
han hecho una resolución muy
they've made
interesante
a very
que
interesting
era de
resolution
prohibir la práctica
to prohibit
de
the
la
practice
asesoría
of
fetal, que es la inyección
the
letal en el
practice of the legal
nascituro, ¿no?
injection,
En el no nacido, a
fatal
partir de
injection
22 semanas, que es prohibido
after
acá.
22
Entonces,
22
hacía
weeks.
esa práctica por violación, ¿no? Por estupro, por rape, ¿no?
Just because
y
practice
ellos
of rape,
han prohibido. Por
they
eso
prohibited.
ellos tienen voz.
So
Hasta
they
también,
have
si recorremos ahora
voices.
en el
So
más y concentramos más en la maternidad
and we
subrogada, ¿no?
concentrate
Pero
the efforts in
nuestra
surrogacy.
Suprema
So
Corte
our
esta
Supreme
semana
Court
ha dicho
this
que
week
es permitido, que se va a
has
permitir
said that surrogacy will
la
be
inyección
allowed.
fetal, ¿no? letal en los no nacidos de 22 semanas en adelante, hasta el fin de gestación, ¿no?
They've
Entonces,
approved
estamos trabajando
the legal
este tema
injection
para fortalecer el
for
Consejo
over 22
Federal de
weeks.
Medicina y
So we're
después
working
poder
in this
trabajar
topic
también
now.
la maternidad
Afterwards, we will have to
subrogada, porque
work
está siendo un
on
mecanismo
surrogacy
para
because it's a
la
mechanism
hipersexualización y también
for
para
the
para
hypersexualization
fines
and
ideológicos,
for
¿no?
other
Pero acá
ideological
también
objectives. So
podemos entrar
here
con
we can
eso
also say, or we can
el
enter
estatuto
this,
de niño y
the
adolescente, porque la
statutes
protección del niño es más
children
comprendida, ¿no?
and
Entonces
youngsters
vemos que para combatir no
to fight.
debemos ir por
We don't
por
have
el
to
matrimonio,
go
por esa ideología, pero
through this
principalmente por la
ideology, but maybe
defensa del niño. Entonces,
mainly through the defense of the
yo
child.
comparto esto con vosotros,
So
¿no?
I
Que
share this with you,
no es la
and
preocupación mayor que tenemos ahora,
it's not
es que
the
el
main
aborto no
concern
entre
that
en
we
el
have
país,
right
¿no?
now, that the abortion
Pero
doesn't
vemos
enter in the country.
condiciones
Right now,
después de
it's our
trabajar
main,
más este tema,
but
así que
afterwards
logremos
we'll have to
fortalecer
work
a la
to
defensa ahora
strengthen
del
the
aborto
defense
este año,
of
¿no?
the
Entonces es eso,
abortion
muchas
this year.
gracias por escucharnos y muchas
Thank you
gracias,
for listening
muchísimas
to us,
gracias
and
Bernardo
thank
y
you
todos
very
por
much,
el trabajo
Bernard,
que
and
están
everyone
haciendo, que
else
está
for the
iluminando
work
el
that you're
mundo
making
nosotros también.
in the world and for us too.
Marila, thank you. So we have a questions for the speakers from Ninji Wyoming. She said that how should we articulate the issue with the right to have children, which I have heard being used to defend the position of surrogacy. What thoughts do you have on that? I don't know who wants to start. Emma, okay, go ahead.
I can start. Thank you for the question. Yeah, so the right to have children framework is incredibly popular everywhere, especially in the United States, as I mentioned. And so the way that we typically respond to this is pointing out that no adult has an absolute right to a child. We view children as a gift that's received, but they're not a right that you can control and manipulate, especially using the body of another person. And so we really draw out the rights of all people involved, right? So the right of the surrogate and her own body autonomy, respecting her body, not reducing women to a womb or a part that can be rented. Secondly, the rights and autonomy of the child, right? The child has a right to his or her mother and father. So one of the primary concerns in commercial surrogacy, or any form of surrogacy for that matter, is that it splits the mother into three parts. There's the gestational mother, the woman who carries the child. And this is the woman the child builds their first bond with, right? The only mother that child ever knows, right, when they're born is the woman who carried them, whether or not they're genetically, technically related, right? The second mother that surrogacy creates is potentially the genetic or biological mother. So if the couple who is using surrogacy relies on egg donation from a friend or just a random donor, then that child now has a genetic connection to this woman that's their genetic mother. And then the third mother in surrogacy is the intended mother who intends to raise the child, right? The social or relational mother, if there's a mother at all, because as I mentioned, in many cases, these are gay male same-sex couples where there is no mother for the child. So when we talk about the right to a child or the right to a child, we switch that and say, what are the rights of a child in this situation? And one of the primary rights of a child is to have that foundational relationship with both their mother and their father. But since surrogacy severs that foundational relationship by splitting a mother into two or three people, right? So they don't have one mother, they have three different women who have been their mother in some sense, or no mother at all, right? Because there's no requirement in the United States that you have to have a mother in the surrogacy contract. And so by thinking about this from the rights of the child involved, we're really able to switch this from a left-right political issue and make it something about the well-being of the child involved, so that we're not thinking about the desires of adults, as Katie Faust says, but we're thinking about the best interest of the child. And that tends to be a very compelling way to argue this. It's able to get people to think more deeply about the surrogacy contract.
Yeah, thank you. I agree with Emma, of course. And then I should say, as we say in the Casablanca Declaration, that we recognize the suffering of people who are not available to have children because of many reasons. But then even if we don't give like any solution to this problem, I think like we have also to think about the how can I say, like the international solidarity. For example, I live in the Middle East, in Beirut, in Lebanon, and we see every day so many young children in the streets, for example, in the garbage, who are abandoned. This afternoon, a few hours ago, I had a meeting, a lunch in an orphanage in the mountain in Lebanon, and there you can see these children who are abandoned by their parents, or they don't have parents, whatever. So I think there are so many young people, children around the world who are waiting for a caring family, or just adults who can take care of them or help them with money, with other kind of support. So I think this is more like a political solution, not just like a legal one. Of course, there is no right to have to have children, as Emma said. There is a right. The right is for children, but then politicians, as you are politicians or leaders, we have to think more about how to there's not just adoption. There are so many, as we say in French, like parrainage, other solutions to put these people who want to give their affection, energy to some children in the world. They can help a lot of institutions. I know it's not the same thing to have your own children, but this is a real need around the world, you know? This is a little bit my opinion.
Muchas gracias, Bernardo. Pues no sé si hay alguna intervención más.
So I don't know if there's any other
pero
questions,
vamos a terminar
but
sino ya el
gonna end
webinar.
the webinar. If not,
Interesantísimo el poder
very
tener esta dimensión
interesting.
transatlántica,
The possibility to
punto
have
de
this
vista tan
transatlantic
amplio,
dimension of this
los
wide
diferentes
point of
países,
view from different
y
countries.
que para nosotros es muy
And for
valioso y para
us,
todos.
it's very valuable, and for
Hemos
all of
pedido
us,
también el texto
we
de
have
la ley.
asked
Mira,
the
Pellegrini,
text of the
enseguida
law.
te doy la palabra con mucho gusto. Hemos
Pellegrini,
pedido
she also wants
el
to speak.
texto
Yeah,
de la
I'm
ley
gonna
a la
let
diputada
you speak in a minute.
Lucaselli, el texto de la ley italiana.
So text
Nos lo
of the
solicitaba
Italian law from
Alice,
Deputy
y
Lucaselli
seguro que para todos
and
es muy
Deputy
interesante
Alice,
tenerlo, así
and
que
to all
lo
of us to
compartiremos.
have those
Pellegrini,
texts will be
adelante,
shared
y
with
ya
all
después de
of
ti
interested parties.
terminamos.
Pellegrini, go ahead.
Está
And
silenciado.
we'll end after you.
Discúlpanos,
You're mute.
eso es.
Sorry, yeah, great.
Ahora.
Muy bien.
Bien,
Very well.
un saludo afectuoso a todos los presentes.
To all of the here present.
Realmente muy,
it's really
muy bueno participar en este tipo
very good.
de
It's very good to
eventos.
participate in this kind of
Aquí en
events.
República Dominicana,
And here in Dominican
simplemente
Republic,
para informarles,
simply just to let you know,
este tema
this topic
no ha entrado en la discusión.
It hasn't been on the table
En el
yet.
debate público, en el debate
in the public debate.
Tenemos razones para pensar
We have reasons to
de
think
que
that
se pueden estar haciendo estas prácticas, pero
maybe
de
these
manera
practices are being carried
ilegal.
out, but
Y
in an illegal
se puede
way.
decir que hasta el día de
And
hoy
maybe even, well, let's say
es
that
una
up until
práctica
today, it's a
marginal.
practice that it's a very marginal one.
Tenemos otros problemas.
We have other
Pero
problems,
este tema
but this topic
es, como se ha visto por la
is, as we've
exposición
seen, because
de
of the
los
presentations of the
este es un
speakers.
tema que
This is a
tenemos
topic
que
that we have
integrarlo a una
to
visión
integrate it into a wider vision
bien abarcadora de un concepto que yo vengo
of
planteando
a concept that I've been proposing.
un concepto que
Well, I
debería
mentioned
ser
this to you.
un tema
A concept that
nuestras corrientes, de nuestras
could be
instituciones, de nuestras posiciones.
part of our institutions,
El
our
concepto de
positions, our
integridad
agenda.
demográfica.
The demographic
Los estados luchan por
concept.
su integridad
The
territorial.
states, they fight for their
Hay guerras por la integridad territorial.
for the integrity of their
Sin embargo,
soil,
tan
and then there are
importante o más
fights about that,
importante que la
but it's
integridad
the same or so much more important
territorial es la
of
integridad
territorial
demográfica.
integrity is the demographic integrity.
Y esto también asociado al tema de la
So this is
identidad
associated
nacional.
to
De modo
the
que
topic of national
cuando
identity.
vinculamos este
When we
tema a
tie
todos los
together
otros temas
this topic with other
que
topics
están relacionados
that are related,
y a otros que parecen remotos, pero
and to others
están ahí
that seem
presentes.
far away, but they're present.
Sin duda,
No
estamos en
doubt,
presencia de
we are in the
ese
presence
ataque,
of
ese
this
abordaje
attack,
malevolente contra la
evil
integridad
attack against the
demográfica de las naciones
demographic
y de la
integrity
humanidad.
of
Por
nations and
ejemplo, voy a dar
humanity.
un testimonio de una
Let
lucha
me
que
give
estamos
a
librando
testimony of a
precisamente en
fight
estos
that we're
momentos.
having here
Nuestro
now,
partido y
our
un grupo
party
de instituciones
and a group of
vinculadas
institutions
al tema de la salud mental.
linked to mental health,
Acabamos de hacer una denuncia que la voy a
we
poner
just
para que ustedes
presented a
estén al tanto
lawsuit.
de
I'm
esa
going to share
lucha.
it
La
with
voy a
you so
poner a la
you know about
disposición
this fight. So I'm going to share that with you
del foro, que es
through
el
the
tema
network.
del impacto de la
The topic is
pornografía
the impact of pornography
en la educación.
in the education,
El sistema educativo del país,
in the national educational system
metió nada más y nada menos
is trying to
que
advance.
muchas computadoras, muchas tabletas para
And our
2
system
millones y
had like a
medio
lot of
de
computers
alumnos sin
and tablets
tomarse
for
el cuidado,
2.5
la
million
previsión
students, but
de
without
establecer
taking
filtros,
care of
controles
establishing
parentales.
controls and
Y
filters
eso
and parental guards.
definitivamente que ha creado un problema
And this has created a big
sanitario muy
problem,
serio, un problema de
a
salud
sanitary
pública, un problema de
a public
seguridad
health
incluso
and security and
ciudadana.
safety problem.
Y al mismo tiempo ha abierto
And at the same time has opened the
fenómeno de
door
adicción de
for an
niños,
addiction problem of children,
a juegos virtuales.
an addiction
Eso,
to virtual gaming.
ya lo hemos llevado formalmente al Ministerio de Salud.
We've
Hablamos con el
spoke to the
al
Minister of
Ministerio de
Health,
Educación
the
también,
Minister of Education
y
also as
próximamente
well.
lo vamos a hacer en la
And we're
Procuraduría
going to do
General
that
de
the
la
same thing
República,
to
esperando una respuesta
the General
del
Attorney,
Estado y de
expecting
todas las
an answer
instituciones
to what the
para
state and its institution
abordar este tema que
are going to
a
do
su
about
vez
this.
ya tiene unas secuelas perversas, muy perversas,
And
porque
in
se
itself
ha
is
disparado
very
aquí la práctica de la pornografía infantil
bad consequences
hecha en
because of the
República
practice
Dominicana.
of child
Una
pornography
cosa
practices
que
in Dominican
antes era
Republic.
marginal, ahora se ha disparado. Entonces, volviendo,
So this has been
creo aquí el debate no ha llegado.
is increasing. So debate
Va a
has
ser
not been
difícil
here.
que se abra paso
It's going to
aquí
be
porque
hard
todas las
to
corrientes que están
open its way
dominando al
because
día de
now
hoy en el debate
all
son
the
conservadoras.
political
No han
debates
podido despenalizar el
is
aborto,
dominated
ni
by
siquiera en las
conservatives,
famosas 3 causales.
and then there's no
Pero
despenalization
van a
of
volver,
abortion.
van a
But they'll
volver
come back. They will come back for sure
con esa ofensiva y aquí se está librando esa batalla.
with their attacks. And
Hasta ahora se han ganado
we're in this fight
algunas,
now.
otras.
Some
La batalla de la
win,
vida, yo
some
digo que
lose,
es tan
but the battle
importante
for
como
life
la
is as important
constitucional, como la legal. Y ahí sí podemos
as
decir que
others.
estamos perdiendo en muchos frentes,
And
porque en
there
la
are
realidad
fronts where
todo
we're
este
losing
avance, toda esta cultura está
because all this
minando.
advancement of this
Y vuelvo
culture
y digo,
is
no, o sea,
undermining
no
our
tenemos
culture.
denuncias permanentes sobre
We have permanent, we don't
la
have permanent
práctica de
lawsuits
contrato de subrogación
about
de vientre ni nada por el estilo, pero
surrogacy and nothing like that. But
sabemos que hay grupos
we
que
know
lo pueden
there
estar
are groups
haciendo de
who
manera
can
ilegal.
be
No
doing it
tenemos
illegally.
pruebas todavía, pero
We don't have
en algunas
proof, but
clínicas sí se
some
está
clinics
haciendo
we have seen
algún tipo de práctica
now and then this
que todavía no se ha
practices
podido determinar
that we haven't
cuál es el
determined
alcance de lo que
fully
están
what
haciendo
is
bajo el concepto de
reach
salud reproductiva.
under
Pues muchas
reproductive
gracias,
health.
Pellegrín. Nos
Thank
consuela
you,
saber que en
Pellegrin.
República Dominicana
We are
se
happy that knowing
protege
that
la vida y se protege la
that
dignidad de
life
las mujeres.
and
Y
dignity of
ahora hay
women
que
is
estar muy
protected in
alerta y
Dominican
blindar
Republic. We
todo
have
lo
to
que
be
se pueda
alert and we have to protect
sea,
and do all
antes
the
de que llegue,
protections
¿no?
needed so
Así que
before
muchas gracias
all
a
these
todos.
topics reach there. Thank
Terminamos
you
aquí
all.
y
We end this
os
webinar
tendremos a todos al tanto de
and
del
we'll have
próximo del próximo webinar.
And we will be
Muchas gracias.
pending to the next
Gracias, Lola.
location.
Buen
Thank you
día.
very much.